Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to Live with Liz. This is an exciting week because it is our first week going live on LinkedIn, which we have wanted to do for a long time. I am so thrilled that it's finally here and don't know if it's working at all. And I'm not sure if people are joining us from LinkedIn. If you could comment, that would be helpful. Ask a question, let me know that you're here. I would love to interact with you on this new channel for us. Just some background, Live with Liz every week, Wednesdays at 9 o'clock a.m. Houston time, that's Central Time in the United States. We also post our recaps every week, so if you miss it, don't worry, you can always watch it again. Not that you'd be worried about it because it's just me, but we cover some interesting topics related to legal marketing and business development for law firms. And sometimes they're controversial, sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're not. These are quick. These are only about 15 to 20 minutes, and just grab a cup of coffee. They're kind of fun sometimes. If you have questions, we answer them. We don't charge you for those. So we're really excited to be offering Live with Liz on LinkedIn and the other channels where we always are. So grateful. Oh, Marco, that's great. Thanks for letting me know. That's awesome. I love that it's working. So this week, we're talking about a crazy topic, but before we dive into that one, you probably saw, if you're in the IP space, as we are, the INTA announcement last week. And I just mentioned that we're based in Houston, so I'm pretty crushed that INTA is not going to be live in Houston later this year. It's understandable. We're still in a global pandemic, safety first, of course, but it does feel a little bit like part of last year all over again. And hopefully Intel will circle back to Houston eventually. I'm sure it will. But definitely looking forward to seeing everyone in person, hopefully next year in Singapore. And maybe even on the virtual events. A lot of you are probably attending leadership this week. Hey, Ken, how's it going? So we are talking this week about rankings publications and whether or not they are still worth it. I have some pretty strong feelings about this, as I'm sure some of you do as well. But story time first. When I was in-house, I'll date myself here because the rankings publications were paper form, and I'm sure many of you remember, probably even still have, these giant bricks from Chambers and Partners that had listings of people that were from all over the world and law firms from all over the world ranking what band they were in terms of quality of service from a particular country. And they put out a global book, and then they put out books from all over different regions of the world. And I, in-house, used to receive all of them. So I'd get like 5 giant Chambers and Partners books every year, and they would just pile up. It was amazing. I wish I still kept some of them for my toddler to sit on now, but I didn't. So we often used these in-house to help make decisions about whom to hire around the world. We would check and see who had a profile, what band the firms were in different countries as a part of the process. It wasn't the only factor in making the decision about which firm to go with, but it certainly could influence the decision. There were some things that maybe people wouldn't know. I worked in a couple of different in-house environments, and in the privately held company environment, the philosophy was quite different. You know, go with band 1, they're the best, they'll probably be fine. They've been vetted by other people who conduct research. In the publicly traded environment, it was never go with band 1, they will be the most expensive. Always look for band 3 or band 4, make sure you're getting charged local prices for legal services, and those are likely the ones that had more domestic clients. So there were some assumptions made about your band placement as to what kind of clients you usually worked with. We wanted people who were connected to that local environment. Well, fast forward, over the last few years, just like all of us have had to adapt to evolving digital transformation, all the special words that talk about how we've incorporated new technologies into our lives and our decision-making and what we do, well, things have changed with legal publications too. Almost none of them are in print anymore. They're almost all digital. This now includes Chambers and Partners. Does that change their value? Does that make them less valuable for us? Well, if people weren't using them, maybe the lack of use is what would make them less valuable. Well, Even back in the day when I was in-house, we didn't just rely on the publications. I was already using Google searching and other browsers and using even LinkedIn in the earliest days to locate foreign counsel. And there were certain criteria that people had to meet to get on the approved counsel list. And then we would also do the more traditional RFPs once we narrowed down the firms that we wanted to send those to. Nowadays, things are different. And with this digital transformation, the offerings that we see from the rankings publishers have also changed. Now, I know some of you are super familiar with, like I said before, Chambers and Partners, maybe the Legal 500. Maybe you're familiar with Who's Who Legal or Best Lawyers, or if you're in the IP space, you might be familiar with the WTR 1000 or IAM 1000. There's also benchmarking, IP stars. There are, according to the Legal Marketing Association, over 1,000 ranking publications out there. Some are worth it. Hola, hola. I'm seeing more people join. I love this. This being on LinkedIn is cool. So you have so many different publications out there with different offerings. With rankings, there's more than one type. So you've got what the traditional ranking publication does, which is conduct some research. They tell you that it's independent, not connected to their sales procedures or their salespeople. You generally fill out these submission forms, and then you get evaluated by someone in a secret process that they don't want to share with you because it's proprietary. You don't see much deviation, though, in the rankings results. And some of that may be because they're trying to make sure that everyone has the level of integrity that keeps their sales up and that keeps them useful. But you really don't see a lot of deviation between the results in band 1, band 2, band 3. If you're a leader, you're a leader. So there are some firms that I've worked with that say, oh, we never have to fill out submissions where, number one, we know it, they know it, and there's no point. Why waste our time and energy and money doing that? And then there are other types of publications in the ranking space. There are peer rankings where you're sent a survey and asked, whom amongst you does well? And they want the lawyers in this space to give their true opinions about who they work with, who they want to work with. And so these are considered peer-to-peer. The research is not as specifically related to referees and cases, which is what most of the other traditional rankings publications rely upon. They want to talk to your clients, they want to talk to people who have worked with you, and they want to see your results, your cases, the number of filings you do in your particular legal practice. And then there's some other types of rankings where it's just a listing that has been evaluated in the marketplace without a research submission, where a publisher is doing market research and creating a list and putting it out there and saying, these are our top firms, these are our top 10. I actually kind of like those because they're simple. The firms didn't have to do anything to get in there. You either get in there or you don't. Some of these are tied to commercial investments. And this, whether or not playing the game of research submissions being included and then paying for profiles, is part of what we're thinking about when we're talking about, is it worthwhile to still go with the rankings? Well, it's not just a yes or a no. I'm going to say it depends, which is the lawyer's favorite answer. It depends. But I will say that they are less valuable than they used to be across the board. And there are a lot of reasons for this, but primarily it's because the way that people are searching for lawyers has changed. Now, word of mouth has always been number one and remains number one today. You will often see people it's a daunting task to look up lawyers. You see a lot of different results. Who has the time to do the research? Why don't I just ask my in-house friend or my private practice friend who I know has worked with a jurisdiction to see who they like and why they like them, and then just call it a day, make it easy. They like them, I'm going with them. It's the same thing when I was in-house and general counsel was like, if you can't figure it out, just call counsel at Coca-Cola and ask them who they use and then just use them if you have to. Okay, that's another way to do it. And in that case, the rankings really didn't matter for finding outside counsel. Are there other reasons to have the rankings if it's not for business development and to find outside counsel? I find there are obviously some vanity bragging rights that go along with this that a lot of lawyers cling to. They like to announce that they're included, and it gives them another reason to just stand on a podium and shout out how great they are. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but it's not adding a lot of value for the time and energy that people are spending online, right? So getting the news that people needed to have some valuable information as a part of their online research and journey into finding outside counsel or into just knowing who's out there, these publications all shifted. And instead of just offering rankings, almost all of them, not every single one, but almost all of them started offering thought leadership, guides, and exclusive positions to author something in their publication to be published alongside your profile. Well, it's disorganized. The results are difficult to measure. Not everywhere. Some publishers are great with sharing analytics and their distribution figures, what kind of audience you reach. But whether or not it's worth it for your investment very much depends on who sees that information, whether or not it's actually being used, who's successful with search engine optimization, SEO, which I know a lot of lawyers don't want to think about, and you shouldn't really have to, but basically all SEO is indicating is being found online and being at the top of the Google search results. Some people say if you're not on that first page, you're invisible. So if the rankings publishers are selling you a profile for thousands of dollars every year, and the expectation is, and the sales pitch they give you is, this will help you be found by the people who want to hire legal services. And this will help you get hired. It will help showcase your services, give people a way to connect with you to your website. Well, there are certain things you can check to verify that. Of course, you can use your Google Analytics. There are other analytics platforms out there that can tell you if you're actually getting traffic from the profile publication online. That is useful information to determine the value of the investment in the ranking. But you can also check for yourself in some of these places. If you are in a particular jurisdiction where you're not seated, where your legal clients or potential clients are also seated, you may want to use a VPN or some other, maybe a contact in another place to check for you, because these are geographically centered. So the results when I go search on Google are different here in the United States than the results if I were just across the border in Mexico. The results would be different. Even from state to state, they're different. So they're highly localized results. That's true. But I will tell you that when I look for a lawyer across the board in any practice area, and when I'm doing a search and thinking about the way a client might search, I'm going to say, okay, I'm looking for an IP lawyer, and I want an IP lawyer who knows the automotive industry in Canada. And I'm going to put the country, I may put the industry, I'm probably going to put the practice area and see what comes up. And almost always the results sitting where I am in the United States are going to include the directories. Very rarely am I going to see law firms in those top results. They're usually going to be law firms that have invested in their SEO and not the law firms that have invested in profiles and rankings publications. That's right. I'm going to find the law firms that have invested in SEO and maybe not find the law firms that have invested in the rankings publications first, right? Now, there are some publications that have mastered their SEO. They've really figured it out. And from where I am, the top results almost always include the Legal 500. They also include a peer review publication here in the United States, Best Lawyers, which some reporters have recently bashed in Europe and said this is not a legitimate publication. Whether you see a lot of value in their research and whether you think that they're legitimate or not, they are showing up at the top, and there is value to showing up and to being on the top. There is value there. Sometimes you see thought leadership pieces from chambers and partners if you're looking for something in law. Sometimes you see things through Lexology, but not very many of those 1,000+ rankings publications have the best results out there. I can tell that certain publications are investing, and the investments that they're making may make them more valuable. So shout out to Leaders League, which over the past few years has actually opened physical offices in other jurisdictions to be closer to their research. And of course, their sales are consideration, I'm sure, into that as well. But they're actually investing, and they're investing in search engine optimization, and you can tell. So it's possible that if you consider the search engine optimization along with the analytics that drive traffic to you and actually have people show up, that some of these rankings publications are still worth it. But it's also likely that many of them are not. And I do suggest that those that were late to the game to digitize, that still have not invested in their SEO in a clear path, that have disorganized profile arrangement on their website, these are the ones that are not as valuable. Now, maybe Chambers and Partners maybe will invest more and figure it out, and I think they are, so that their name once again has the stature that it had 10 years ago, and that people will rely on it more than they do today. But just because your friend is in the publication, or just because you remember it being the best publication, or you think that the legacy is important, doesn't mean that it's worth spending thousands of dollars to invest in these rankings anymore. So I'm probably a little bit further out there than a lot of people. Yeah, completely agree, Ken. Ken is saying that SEO is more important. It definitely is. It definitely is. If you can't be found, what's the point? What's the point? I mean, it's nice to have a profile somewhere if people are actually flipping through a book to hire you, but they're not anymore. Those books don't even exist anymore in some cases. Also, hey, what about Chambers and Partners? I don't know if a lot of you worked in multiple jurisdictions, but a lot of my clients in Latin America especially were paying for profiles in a global publication and also paying for them in the Latin American publication. And even after they stopped selling the physical version, they were still selling you 2 profiles. But when I go to search online, it's a little bit frustrating to have to select different jurisdictions first. And if you don't have to select different jurisdictions and you can just search by firm name, what's the point in having 2 profiles? Why are you paying twice? Why have they been making the law firms that invest in them pay twice for all these years? I don't know. Well, I'm not recommending doing that anymore, but I still do find value in some of these publications, and it really just depends on the firm's individual situation, your practice area, your targets, your goals. If you have questions about rankings publications and which ones are the most valuable for you, and whether you should invest time and energy in the submission and research process, or even more money in things like sponsoring articles and having actual profiles in these publications, I'm happy to answer questions. Just shoot me an email. solutions@firmforward.com is the email to send questions. Hope you liked this Live with Liz and that you will join us again Wednesdays, 9 a.m. Houston time. And take care, everybody. Have a great week. Let's see if I can figure this out. Oh, here we go.